Just wanted to say a thought about, is Xrobau a poetic language? I mean, I think it is. Sure, fine, it is. These are pretty words. I like these words. I think you could make very nice poems out of them. Shveyu means X1 experiences a pleasant, soothing sensation of warmth and contentment from a gentle touch from X2. Shveyu. I like how Chat GPT threw in that X2. Like, I shveyu the you. Me shveyu though. Because I mean, if I had thought of shveyu, I would have thought of making it just that the X1 feels it, and not that it's directed at a person or coming from a person. Like mi do shveyu, I mi pu shveyu lo prenu. The person, I felt a pleasant and soothing sensation of warmth and contentment from a gentle touch from the person. Mi pu shveyu lo prenu. And I think it's poetic, as in, it sounds nice. I love the way Lojban sounds, and thus the way Xrobau sounds. It's the same language. But, um, but there's a way that this confused, because, in English, if you want to start to talk about, if you want to say something more complex than like, I love you, I like you, this touch is nice. All right. If you want to say anything very sophisticated or complicated about touch and emotions, you're going to have to make some metaphors, because all you've got is like words for stuff. So you're gonna need to make you're gonna need to be poetic in the sense of metaphorical, in the sense of using some metaphors to talk, because you don't have a bunch of touch words. You don't have a bunch of xrovla like you do in Xrobau. In Xrobau, you have a bunch of xrovla. So, for instance, Shluha, X1 feels a sense of deep emotional connection with X2 that flows effortlessly and smoothly like a river flowing downstream. This is more of a relationship word. This is more of a xrovla, a relationship word, xrovla. But Shluha, it means to feel a deep emotional connection with someone that flows effortlessly and smoothly. But you see how in English, you have to say something about flowing, for instance, and make up a whole water metaphor in order to talk about fluha. But that's exactly what you don't have to do in Xrobau, because there literally just is the word fluha, where shvoima means X1 has a feeling of vulnerability or exposure that arises from experiencing deep emotional intimacy with someone. And that is the vulnerability, exposure is a sort of metaphor for shvoima, which is just, these are directly words for these things. So it's Shmaui means X1 feels completely at ease and comfortable in the surroundings, as if they found a place where they truly belong. So Shmaui is just directly describes an emotion. And so you don't have to be poetic in Xrobau to talk about feeling Shmaui. Like in English, you'd have to, all these things you have to, yeah, shmeyo means X1 feels a warm and fuzzy sensation in their chest when they think about X2. So to talk about feeling shmeyo about someone in English, you have to say, like, make a metaphor, like my chest it feels fuzzy in my chest, or you don't know if it's a metaphor or not. You don't know whether people are describing somewhat directly a touch sensation or whether they're making a metaphor, since in English you don't mark whether peha or pehane. So, uh, but the idea isn't to Spluha. X1 has a sense of grounding and stability that comes from receiving affection from someone who makes you feel secure and supported. In English, we have, in order to talk about this definition, that definition is invented by ChatGPT. That definition, in order to get to describing this feeling of Spluha, refers to grounding, stability, secure and supported, a metaphor about not falling over. But that's that's a metaphorical description of how Spluha feels, which is what you do in English because it doesn't have that many emotion words and hardly any xrovla, any words about affectionate touch. So if you want to say about something like Spluha, you're going to need a metaphor. Xrobau, you just say Spluha, and it's not a metaphor. Like Spluha does not have in it this metaphor about grounding and supported. It's the feeling that metaphor is pointing at, and it's directly the feeling, or it's directly a person who experiences the feeling. That in this case we have just one place. Spluha is the person who's feeling that in English we tend to describe it as grounded. You could think of a different metaphor for you could I feel stuck in that metaphor. I can't immediately think of another metaphor. But it's not but Spluha is not in itself a metaphor. And to discuss being Spluha is not itself metaphorical or poetic, if that makes sense. Like, Spluha is a word that then you could from there make metaphors. You could talk about like a building being Spluha peha, meaning that it's like it's feeling it has a security from how people are taking care of it and stuff. And maybe the building it's like the building is Spluha. That you can take a metaphor from it. But it's not in English. There's just this assumption that if you're going to talk about xrotu at all, you're going to even like the basic even like affection is not exactly doesn't directly mean xrotu, and the whole thing is sort of is talked about at arm's length, which can be fun because then you're always talking in metaphor, which is fun, but also it's funny how it's made mandatory by how English is scared of words that actually directly have to do with bodies and stuff. Okay, I hope that clarifies somewhat, or that's my thought right now about is Xrobau a poetic language? In a way, it's less poetic. It's very literal. They're just directly words for the things.